you very much for staying on. Welcome back. Now, some concerns are being raised about the whole ESLA bond arrangement to clear debts owed banks and firms in the energy sector. This follows revelations that the immediate fresh cash injection that most banks were hoping to get was not realized. But how does this impact on operations of banks said to be in serious financial distress? That's more in the following report.
According to some of the commercial banks that Joy Business have engaged, it was their expectation that the ESLA bond would have helped bring in fresh cash to improve the current liquidity challenge, a development that is threatening the existence of some 3 commercial banks in the country. But Joy Business understands the $122 million released last Thursday was done by using bonds gotten from the 7- and 10-year ESLA paper to swap debts on the books of these banks that were exposed to the energy sector debts. This is despite an arrangement that would rather see these institutions getting some cash every 3 months over the next 7 to 10 years and also sell these bonds they are holding on the secondary market. According to documents covering the ESLA bond, 12 banks are exposed to the energy sector debts, and according to ESLA investor prospectus, these banks are expected to benefit or are in the process of getting their payments. These include Access Bank, Cow Bank, Ecobank, First Atlantic Bank, Fidelity Bank, GT Bank, and Standard Chartered Bank. The others are Stanbic Bank, UMB, Unibank, the defunct UT Bank, and Zenith Bank. There are also questions being raised about the cost of the 2 papers issued. This is because sources say the actual cash gotten from the fundraising exercise is so small, with some even comparing it to cost to raising the bond.
Meanwhile, the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributing Companies say they welcome the current arrangements to clear debts owed them. Sanyo Hossi is Chief Executive of the Chamber.
Government's constraints in trying to get around this debt situation. We have tabled various proposals, and government has favorably considered one and has implemented it. I think we should be one of the foremost people to support the entire exercise. So while we would have welcomed cash, it wasn't a prerequisite because we understand government's constraints. There's an economic problem that the country faces, and government is taking steps to try and address them. All the operators that can must do as much as possible to support government in trying to revive this economy. And taking that decision was in good faith and in support of our economy. We have no regrets for it, even though it could have been better. That's fine.
All right, so we'll come back shortly with this particular development because we learn Cow Bank, which is one of the beneficiary payments of the ESLA or the energy sector debt, has been speaking with George Rafi, who is currently at the City House, where the Cow Bank is taking its turn on the facts behind the figures series there. But moving on, the Ghana cedi has returned to what some are describing as sustained depreciation against the dollar. Joy Business checks showed that the local currency has been losing some ground against some major trading currencies on the interbank market. George Rafi has more.
You needed 4 Ghana cedis, 37 pesos, to get a dollar on the interbank market around the first week in October this year. This was after it recorded some sharp depreciation against the dollar in September. However, current trends on the market, or let's say over the past 2 weeks, show that the cedi is not trading at around 4 Ghana cedis, 42 pesos. A lot of reasons have been advanced for this current challenge. Some analysts say could be worsening going into the last month of this year and even early 2018. However, industry players attribute the challenge limited supply of dollars onto the market, sudden hike in demand for dollars, especially by traders who want to fast-track imports from China before the New Year holiday season. Some have argued that if the trend should continue, it might not be good for prices of goods, since most of the stuff consumed locally are imported, and even the economy as a whole. But persons close to the Bank of Ghana have insisted that the development is just short-term. The necessary corrections should take place soon for the cedi to stabilize strongly against the dollar.
All right, so like I said, we're going back to the energy sector where Carl Bank is set to have received some payments, and Carl Bank MD Frank Edu Jr. Has been giving details of the payments made to clear their portion of the energy sector debt. The Carl Bank MD disclosed this to Joy Business when the institution took its turn at the Ghana Stock Exchange Facts Behind the Figures series. Now, let's cross over now to George to find out what exactly has been paid. And George, if you can hear me, how much has been paid to Carl Bank and how does it impact on their operations?
So, let me first explain to you that last Thursday, government made some $122 million payments to the commercial banks that are exposed to this. If you look at the whole arrangement, it wasn't more of a cash payment to these banks, but what we understand is that it was more of a bond swap. So with respect to Carl Bank's situation, we understand that it should be somewhere more than 500 million Ghana cedis that has been made so far to the bank. And earlier on, Mr. Frank Edu has also been explaining to us, how the impact of this whole payments on their operations. Let's watch Mr. Frank Edu explain this to us.
As I said earlier, it's very good for the banks. It's very good because you change asset class from an impaired loan to an investment grade paper. Okay? Now, this addresses the question of liquidity. It's a 7-year bond. It doesn't mean that you're going to hold it for 7 years. What it is saying is that I'm giving you a bond instead of cash. So there's a liquidity challenge there. But it's also a listed bond. So there's a secondary market going to develop in the trading of the bond. So if you have immediate liquidity needs, what you do after the bond is given you is you go to the market and you sell it. So if you're holding 100 million cedis in bonds, you go to the market and then you sell it, and somebody steps in your shoes and makes the yield on the bond.
So it's not really a big challenge in terms of this particular arrangement that's been put in place, because there were some other banks who were looking forward to some cash to improve their liquidity challenge that they were facing.
The banks are not going to get cash, at least not this BDC, not this issue. It's all 542.1 million cedis of it is bonds. We have a formula for sharing those bonds, okay, which will go to the credit of the BDCs in the books of the banks. The bank will now end up with a bond. If they take Carl gets 25 million cedis in bonds today, the 25 million will be apportioned amongst the 4 BDCs that we trade with in a predetermined formula. So the bank, those BDCs, their balances will go down by the amounts in the bonds received by the bank. Tomorrow, my treasurer, if he needs liquidity, can take that bond, call Carl Brokers or whichever broker, and say, I want to liquidate 25 million cedis of the bonds on the stock exchange, put it up for sale, and look for people who will bid for it.
So you earlier on, you saw the clips of the Carl Bank MD Frank Edu trying to explain to us what this would mean to the bank's operation. There's also talk about what next for Carl Bank in terms of growing its loan book. And Mr. Frank Edu spoke to us or told us about the fact that they're looking at agency banking, doing more aggressive, growing the loan book by giving out more loans. And all these things, he believes that will go a long way to position the bank as the preferred bank in Ghana,
Now, still staying within this space, and now what has Carl Bank, or did Carl Bank make any comment on the distressed banks that we played yesterday?
And you're right on one. The news is that some 3 commercial banks appear to be in a serious financial distress. And in finance, in banking, they'll talk about the contagion effect, what this will mean for other banks. And so we put that question again to Mr. Frank Edu about whether they are being impacted by what we hear about the panic withdrawals in the industry. That's what he had to say.
Actually, it's the thing about banking is because the stock in trade is cash. The contagion effect of a negative activity at one bank can be fairly widespread. So we always caution reportage on banks to be circumspect and to be very careful. Because the minute you start talking about one or two banks being in distress, if there are 25 banks and nobody knows which two banks are in distress or potentially in distress, understand that the majority of people too are not necessarily conversant with the balance sheet of a bank. So if I am a depositor in a bank, I will not wait. I will just go and take my money from whichever bank, not even though my bank may not be the one in distress. So reporting on distressed banks must be factual and not speculative, and must be objective and to the point. And if there is a distressed bank, the bank must be singled out. Otherwise, you create a certain panic, as you said.
So you had the CalBank MD trying to give us some assurance that there might not be any need to panic because of the perceived or the expected panic withdrawals by some people as a result of this news that some commercial banks might be in serious financial distress. He also spoke about the whole recapitalization issue, and he says that come next year, they would meet the minimum capital requirement. However, if there's any beautiful lady out there that they can also go or look at in terms of partnering, they wouldn't actually rule that one out, Mr. Yaffe.
All right, George, thank you very much for that update. George Yaffe joining us live from the City House, where CalBank, which is a beneficiary of one of the energy sector debt payment, has been giving details about what exactly or how much exactly has been paid to the bank and other contingencies. Away from that, our countdown to the budget is on, and in today's Budget Watch series, 10 different taxes in the 2017 budget were either scrapped or reviewed to bring some relief to businesses and Ghanaians in general. One such tax was a 10% import duty on imported spare parts. The Association of Spare Parts Dealers says prices have not changed much in the market after the abolition of the tax. This is because the cedi is still performing poorly against the dollar. They also claim the retail market has been taken over by foreigners.
8 days to the reading of the 2018 budget, and here in Abose Okai is business as usual. As Finance Minister read the 2017 budget, one of the key things that was on the items of tax removals was, well, the removal of import duty on spare parts. We want to find out from spare parts dealers about a few days towards the 2018 budget, how this removal impacted their business, what their expectations are for the 2018 budget, and if indeed this will be honored as we inch towards the 15th of November, which is the budget date. At the market, we gathered prices had not changed much after the Finance Minister's announcement of a total scrap of the import duty tax on spare parts. That meant striking out one tax out of the 15 taxes spare parts dealers had to pay before clearing their goods. So our question to the public relations officer at the Spare Parts Association was, after that huge amount was taken from the list, did it make any impact on their businesses?
I sell Japanese vehicle spare parts. Let's say water pump. Let's take water pump for instance for Mitsubishi Lancer. You know, before the budget was announced, I was selling this water pump for 120 Ghana cedis, and because the 10% has been taken off, what I'm supposed to do is to at least like reduce it to maybe about 100. But currently I've been able to reduce maybe about 10 cedis. So now if you give me maybe 110 or 105, I'll accept it.
The cedi has been performing abysmally against the dollar, with some outrageous rate in 2016 at 4.8 cedis in March and now 4.4 cedis to the dollar.
Our cedi, which has not been able to match the foreign exchange. So what we are calling the government to do is to try as much as possible, you know, to put measures together which will be able to, you know, address this situation, so that we in the spare parts industry will be able to reduce our price to the barest minimum or to the 15 to 20% that we envisage, so that those who comes to buy the spare parts, will enjoy that rebate.
For some spare parts dealers, they have not reduced their prices because they have not brought in goods from abroad. So, since the budget was read in 2017, have you reduced any of your items?
Not yet. I haven't reduced any of my items. Yeah, because I'm not seeing any difference. It's still the same.
What you mean is that you haven't imported anything?
So far, yeah.
The import duty tax has so far led to marginal reduction in prices of spare parts, according to the association. Foreigners engaging in the retail business have been fingered to be the main setback. Clement Boateng blames the Ghana Investment Promotion Center for being lax.
The dwindling of our cedi, because they repatriate a large chunk of our foreign exchange into their home country. So what we expect the government to do in this coming budget is to address that situation. You see, there is a law which bars the foreigners from engaging in the retail trade, and those who are supposed to enforce that law is the Ghana Investment Promotion Authority, but they are not doing their work. And at the moment, if you go to places like Kantamanto, places like even Abosokan here, places like Kumasi, if you go to Kumasi, if you go to Magazine, if you go to Dum, if you go to Makola, all these foreigners are there and they are engaging in retail trade.
11 taxes were introduced in the 2017 budget, including a waiver on taxes charged at the marketplace to headquarters. So far, a 5% rebate on VAT in the real estate industry, the removal of 17.5 VAT on domestic airlines, among others.
Developers always have to put up infrastructure by themselves. And then in cases where you have to borrow from the banks, you have to pay everything by yourself. Now that the tax is even taken off, at least we'll also encourage, we are thankful to governments, but we'll also encourage to also support us with infrastructure to make it complete.
Some analysts have said the removal of certain taxes have dealt a blow to government revenue, which is currently at 32.8 billion cedis, and that if some of these were maintained, the projected values would have been met. In 2018, in the 2018 budgets, it's likely some more taxes could be touched, and already the Spare Parts Association is asking for their share.
Let's now refresh our memories with some of the taxes that were abolished in the 2017 budget. So you stay tuned for more highlights of the budget as the countdown draws closer. Of course, we'll bring you the budget watch in our subsequent bulletins. Let's now do some international trade here. And as from January 1, 2018, Ghanaian farmers will be able to resume exports of all plant commodities into the European Union market. This follows the European Commission's decision to lift the current ban on the export of 5 plant commodities from Ghana to its market. A statement released by the EU indicates the 5 Ghanaian plants comprising chili pepper, bottle gourds, laffa gourds, bitter gourds, and eggplants will also have duty-free and quota-free access to the EU market like any other products from Ghana. The 5 commodities will, however, have to fulfill the EU phytosanitary legislation to ensure the freedom of quarantine pests. The decision is as a result of an audit undertaken from the 12th to the 21st of September by the Directorate General for Health and Food Safety of the European Commission and the evolution of the numbers of import interceptions with quarantine pests notified by member states for commodities not subject to the ban. The statement acknowledges that Ghanaian authorities had taken significant corrective measures to improve the inspection and control the system for plant health at exit points, particularly at the Kotoka International Airport. The European Commission further congratulated Ghana for reaching this important milestone and encouraged officials to consolidate the upgraded system as well as continue with improvements in the phytosanitary certification system to obtain full compliance with the EU phytosanitary requirements. The resumption of exports of all plant commodities into the EU market will enable Ghana to fully benefit from the 100% preferential access to the EU market provided by the Economic Partnership Agreement, which came into force on the 15th of December 2016. All right, so we would like to assess the impact of this development, and Mr. Francis J. Danso is a content manager at Greek communications company Isoku. He joins us now live via Skype. Good afternoon, sir, and thanks for being with us. Now,
good afternoon.
So what's your personal opinion on this?
I think it's a great news for Ghana and for the people in the horticultural industry as well.
All right, now, to me, 5 commodities out of the whole lot of commodities that we produce is not so significant. What's your take?
Well, when you look at the 5 as compared to what we send out, you say it's not significant. But when you look at the commodities that we are talking about, you also realize that a lot of farmers do produce these commodities for export market, and so it is a relief for those group of people who are into producing those commodities.
Now, according to the release, even though the ban has been lifted, the various commodities will have to comply with the EU phytosanitary conditions. What does this mean, and how does it impact on the operations of farmers here?
So what it means is that before they export the commodities, they have to meet every condition. Where did you buy your inputs? What inputs did you use to plant? What are the conditions? That is your farm conditions within the farm. Every little thing that you do on the farm has to be recorded, and they have to check all that to make sure that it meets international standards. What agrochemicals are we using? If we are also doing organic, what are the organic things that we are doing on the farm? Every little thing that we do has to be checked, and these are the conditions that we have to meet to be able to export to the market.
Now, so with this lifting of the ban, how would it impact on the economy as a whole?
So it means that we are going to increase the export of these commodities into the European market, which of course is going to bring in some needed foreign exchange and also help with employment creation within the industry.
And finally, before you go, the release also said this decision also increases the 100 preferential treatment, so to speak, into the European market by the EPA. What does it mean?
So it means that we are not going to have any quota system on the commodities that we are sending in terms of the agreements that we signed with them about a year ago. You realize that Ghana signed onto the Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union, and so we are not going to have any quota where we are going to be told bring 10, 20, 30%, 40% of your commodities to that market, but it's a free market, and so we can export as much as we produce that meets the standards that they've set for us.
All right, thank you very much for that insight, Mr. Danso. And that was Isoko manager, Francis Danso, bringing us up to speed on the impact of the lifting of the ban on export vegetables from Ghana into the EU market. Away from that, the Amansie West District Security Committee in the Ashanti region has impounded 33 excavators used for mining activities in defiance of government's ban on illegal and small-scale mining. 27 mining operators who were arrested have also been arraigned before the Bekwai Circuit Court and granted bail. The arrest and seizure followed a joint swoop with the National Anti-Galamsey Task Force Operation Vanguard. A major obstacle to the crusade, however, is the Assembly's low capacity to move the excavators from mining sites to assembling premises. Only 9 of the seized equipment have successfully been conveyed to the district capital. District Chief Executive William Asari-Bediako, who also chairs the DISEC, laments the challenge.
I had a call from Vanguard that they've impounded some excavators, and so the Assembly should bring in low beds. And the problem we are having with the fight against this Galamsey is that we don't have all that we need to fight it. Which means what? It means that we lack certain logistics. The Assembly doesn't have a low bed, but when Vanguard 2 makes the arrest, they will call you to bring.
So Mr. Asante Bediatu or Bediako has also vowed the collaboration with the task force will be sustained to deal with lawbreakers. We'll bring you details of that in our subsequent bulletins, especially Business Life, which comes up at 5 p.m. later in the day. And on that note, we wrap up this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace with me, Emmanuel Abuaji Biafi. Join me again same time tomorrow for another edition. Have a good afternoon.